like to call this meeting to order of the Geneva Historic Preservation Commission for Tuesday, November 21st, 2023. First item is our roll call.
Hartman,
Here.
Jensen. Here. McManus.
Here.
Phillips.
Here.
Solomon. Here. Stazen.
Here.
Zelmer.
Here. Great, we have a quorum. Okay. Next is the approval of the meeting minutes for October 17th, 2023. Do we have any revisions? If not, can I get a motion to approve?
I'm going to move to approve the meeting minutes from October 17th.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. No abstentions? Okay. With that, item 3 on our agenda is the 5-minute field guide,
Hooray.
which is back
Yes.
Better than
after an
ever.
extended vacation.
So after an 11-month hiatus, and by popular demand, the 5-minute field guide is being presented this evening. Tonight's topic is Details Make a Difference. How many times has an applicant appeared before this commission stated that the HPC doesn't need to know the details because it's only approving a concept, or that the details will be worked out in the field? Historic preservation is, in fact, all about the details of a project. Preservation requires the identification of critical design features associated with the property's period of significance. When a specific project comes forward, the protection and retention of those critical design features is a priority of this commission. Equally important is the recreation of historic details based on documentation and physical evidence. Recently, the commission has reviewed several commercial storefront projects. Various commissioners have questioned the appropriateness of the details proposed for those projects. Tonight, let's look at how the Secretary of Interior's Standards for Rehabilitation, the SOI standards, might be interpreted at a commercial building whose entire storefront has been lost over time. One solution would be a curtain wall type of storefront using a contemporary aluminum stick system with concealed or integral posts with the glazing plane forward. It could look something like this, which is the most simplistic approach to replacement of a lost storefront. Contemporary monolithic appearances are capable with this type of solution. It does incorporate the historic storefront divisions, but doesn't actually express the columns as in a historic storefront. It gives a minimal opportunity to integrate color into a storefront, and when the glazing plane is moved forward, it more closely replicates the historic glazing plane of the historic storefronts. Center glazing planes actually equates more to what you would find in a contemporary commercial buildings or strip retail center design. This solution is inserted into the historic storefront opening, and by the SOI standards is therefore reversible, and someone could put an authentic restored storefront in the same opening at a later date. Perhaps this solution is most appropriate when no photographic documentation of the historic storefront exists. An alternate solution would be to use exposed columns or posts with the contemporary aluminum stick system inserted between the posts. Again, the glazing plane could be at the forward position or centered. This is kind of an intermediate or compromise approach to replacement of a lost storefront. This hybrid storefront system with historic divisions is more sympathetic because it is expressing the exposed column or post locations of the historic storefront. The contemporary stick window system can be inserted between the fully expressed columns that may be made of tube steel, round columns, or wood. This solution provides a greater opportunity to integrate color into the historic storefront. It also is inserted into the historic storefront opening, and the window system is completely reversible, so again, a historic storefront could be restored at some future date. This is perhaps most appropriate where no photographic documentation of the historic storefront exists, but physical evidence suggests the historic arrangement of a storefront. A traditional storefront would expose the columns or posts and use a wood window sash to recreate the historic appearance. This is the most authentic approach to replacement of a lost storefront that attempts to recreate the original aesthetic of a historic building. It's a historically accurate storefront with storefront divisions expressed by exposed columns or posts. The traditional wood sash windows allow for historically accurate detailing between the decorative columns. With the glazing plane at the forward location, it replicates the historic glazing plane associated with a historic storefront. This provides the greatest opportunity to integrate historic color into a storefront. Perhaps this is most appropriate where photographic documentation of the historic storefront exists. The project is intended as an authentic restoration and/or a project that may be subject to rehabilitation tax incentives. As you can see, with a side-by-side comparison, details make a difference. Each is a reasonable architectural solution for a missing storefront based on interpretation of the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. The local commission, as well as the State Historic Preservation Office or the National Park Service, determine what is appropriate based on the significance of a property, available documentation for the historic conditions, and project budgets. So with that, I hope you have some questions after 11 months.
Spectacular. I can't think of anything better.
That was good, Michael.
It was
Thank
good.
you.
Bravo.
Thank you.
It's all in the name of education.
Could you take 30 seconds and elaborate on, we had in those three, one is reversible and could be restored historically to, as authentic as possible at some later date. If we are in historic preservation, why aren't we as attempting to preserve the character of the design from the get-go rather than say later on, oh, well, they could bring it back to that if they wanted?
That's an excellent question. So, the answer to that is, if there is no photo documentation or physical evidence within the storefront opening, the Secretary of Interior Standards allows for contemporary interpretations of the historic architecture. And also, the SOI standards call for not creating false architecture. So where it's not known, sometimes a conjectural alternative is more acceptable under the SOI standards than not.
Okay.
It's,
But-
again, the SOI standards were designed to be very broad so that local commissions and other design reviewers have some liberty with making those determinations, and that's why your job is so important here.
But, and it'll remain nameless, but not too long ago, we had one where we had photo documentation, and the commission took it upon themselves to alleviate the designer of that responsibility.
That is, again, the benefit of having, drawback of having a democratic system of review.
Okay.
But again, the SOI standards say where there is photo documentation and where there is physical evidence, that the ideal solution is to replicate what we can document.
Okay.
Again, there's always room for wiggle room, and architects or designers can make arguments why they would prefer something else, and this commission has to weigh those individually. But
Got it. Okay.
but those were very good questions. Anybody else?
Yes, Michael.
Yes.
So, on the definition of historically sensitive storefront rehab, the goal is not to replicate precisely of the historic?
It allows a compromise solution. So again, if a budget is such that the project just can't afford to do historic wood windows and that detailing, this would be a compromise because it does, again, identify the historic structural elements that would be associated with a storefront, but use the less expensive infill
Okay.
system.
All right.
Again, I'll repeat this again, the standards were written to be flexible so that each project can be weighed on its own merits, both from a matter of architecture, significance, budget, availability of materials, availability of craftsmanship.
Sure, which could certainly, in today's world, get, definitely over budget if it was, to be executed and historically correct. It could get expensive. Okay, thank you.
That's why estimates are important, because the oldest architectural trick in the book is to tell a client he can't afford it if you're not in favor of doing it. So,
It sounds
Yeah,
like it's spoken
that's
from
where-
experience.
that's where estimates are important.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. The next item on our agenda is item number 4, building, review of building permit applications at 101 West State Street, case number 2023-129.
Thank you, Chairman Zelmer. The rate block property, which is 101 West State Street, is a significant property within the local Geneva Historic District and is listed as a contributing property in the Central Geneva Historic District, listed in the National Register of Historic Places. The building was built in 1853 and replaced a wooden structure at that time. The limestone building was erected by George Welch, who was a mason who had also worked on the Third Kane County Courthouse, as well as the Dunham Castle at Wayne, Illinois. The prominently sited building served as the center of commerce in the growing community and was known as the Old Corner. In May of 1890, the building was acquired at public auction by a group of local businessmen, and the new owners remodeled the building, which included the lowering of the floor approximately 2 feet on the west side of the building in 1891. The following February, a fire in the building resulted in the total collapse of the facade. The following year, in 1893, an entirely new facade of distinctive cream or buff-colored brick was erected along State Street, which still stands at the face of the building today. The west storefront of the rate block was remodeled in 1946, when the original cast iron columns were replaced with round columns and the central recessed entry was installed. The east storefront of the rate block continued in business as a saloon, but later operated as an electric shop until 1935, when the Little Owl Saloon and Restaurant was opened by Egisto or Tony Lencioni. The east storefront was remodeled at that time. The second owners of the Little Owl continued to own the property until 1972. During that time, the east storefront was remodeled again in the mid to late 1970s. The Abruzzani family operated the restaurant until it closed in October of 2019. The Rate building was sold to new owners at that time who began a renovation of the property. However, those plans were abandoned in 2021 and the property was advertised for sale. Now a second group has acquired or is acquiring the historic property with the intent of operating a Geneva location for Tabville Social, an established food and drink venue based in Illinois with 24 locations nationwide. The Rate building is significant as a commercial corner with a history that begins nearly concurrent with the settlement of Geneva. The original building on this site was built in 1837. The 1853 limestone building, which replaced the original building, is significant for its association with architecture of the early settlement era of Geneva, as well as for its 1893 facade of distinctive cream or buff-colored brick, which is an excellent example of late Victorian era commercial building design. Additionally, the building is significant for its association with the numerous notable individuals, businesses, and organizations important to Geneva's development over time. The Rate block retains a high degree of architectural integrity. The existing storefronts are not original to the building, but the existing west storefronts date primarily to 1946 and 1935, when the east storefront had a concrete bulkhead installed as part of the remodeling. The central entry originally provided access to the second floor. Additionally, the building shows signs of minor to significant deterioration of some of its architectural elements, resulting from a combination of deferred maintenance and inappropriate alterations over time. So I'm going to run through some slides to kind of bring everybody up to date of the project. So this is the building, as the building looked in 2019, the historic image that you're familiar with by now. And these are the current architectural drawings that were presented in your packet. And if anybody's interested, I do have the full set of submitted permit drawings here tonight, if you want to look at those. Principally to note is that the window divisions at the storefronts have been equalized per commission review previously. So again, you have those dimensions in your packet. A couple of things to notice is the bulkhead rehabilitation. The upper left picture shows early picture of around 1906 with the decorative recessed panel bulkhead. The image below, the sepia-colored one, is closer to 1895. You can see what has been done over remodeling over time. On the upper right is the 1946 storefront remodeling, the base of it, so it's just basically on a base. However, on the east side, there is a concrete bulkhead that was installed in 1935 that has cracked and shifted over time. So a couple of things to point out. The facade is being proposed to, the south facade is being proposed to be completed under Phase 1. For those of you who watched the City Council meeting last night, you are aware that this project was awarded some grant funding in the neighborhood of $290,000 towards some of the preservation elements that the Commission is seeking to have completed. Approximately $135,000 of that is being reimbursable under Phase 1 as a direct grant, and then the balance of that amount is being granted to the property owners as a sales tax rebate within the next 24 months as they're able to complete those renovations. So the south facade is the primary focus of the first phase. The grant agreement requires that all the elements of the south facade be included in Phase 1. So I have highlighted here that the parapet is identified in the architectural drawings as Phase 2. So that's something that we would want to clarify because the grant agreement calls for it all to be completed in Phase 1. I've inset the details that came out of the architect's drawings, that the window bead that was removed in 2019 is being proposed to be replaced at the storefront windows following the historic profile. That's the red box in the upper right corner. And as you are aware from previous reviews, the central entrance will be made handicap accessible with a ramp and a decorative railing. And again, I've highlighted the proposed railing that is a combination of a historic newel post and a contemporary railing that complements the architecture of the building. And that's in the lower left corner in the red box. I've also highlighted, because based on some questions I've received since the packet went out, the bulkhead has been lowered on the east storefront to replace the concrete bulkhead that is there. It appears on a close examination of the original storefront that the bulkhead was slightly lower on the east than on the west. I've shown the dashed line as where the bulkhead was proposed to be in the previous drawings. And then a couple of commissioners had asked me if the bulkhead should maybe be at some compromise level between the previous one and this version. So that's what this drawing's about for discussion. The drawings call for addressing the deteriorated stone sills and calls for their correction or their repair with either masonry material, or if the deterioration's too bad, we have allowed for sills to be replaced. The Masonry is proposed to be cleaned, which will improve the appearance significantly, and per previous discussions at the July meeting of this year, we talked about the appropriate types of joints for the various facades of the building, and this side had a raked joint rather than a flush or traditional concave bead. As I mentioned, the windows had the original brick mold removed, and so it has been committed through the architectural drawings to restore the wood moldings per previous discussions here at the commission. This is the stamped metal cornice and parapet wall that is to be restored and repainted. As I said, the grant funding that was approved last night identifies this under the Phase 1 costs. The architectural drawings identifies Phase 2, so that's something that needs to be clarified. Couple of details pulled out of the architect's drawings for your review. There's 2 column details, and I'm not sure which is being proposed for the storefront. There's one, the upper one shows it being clad with material to match the storefront system. The other one at the lower level shows that the steel column is being exposed to the storefront, so that needs some clarification. That it may be 2 different conditions in the project. The central door is being restored as close to the original image as possible, and it does follow with the details on the right to have the door fitted into the historic jamb. So again, that is responsive to previous discussions here at the commission. The window details show that the glass is going to be a forward glazing plane. So again, more closely replicating the historic condition of glass in the historic storefront. And that again is responsive to requests by the commission. And the bulkhead is shown with the panel size, and again, it says varies per site slope, and if the commission feels that there should be an adjustment in the height on the east storefront, this detail can easily be expanded to accommodate that. So then there are the questions of that have been raised about the east lintel at the east storefront that shows some deflection and lateral displacement. This is the slide that I've shown before that shows that the lintel has deflected and has been filled with grout over time. It shows that the mortar joints have expanded and cracked. And we also know that the foundation was showing some pretty serious deterioration and then was patched in an unknown situation. But a letter was submitted by Hutter Tranquina Engineering as part of the drawing packs that did identify that there was some minor settlement noted. It notes that the settlement has not affected the load carrying capacity of the structure, but then further goes on to say that which refers to the settlement, should be continued to be monitored in the future and any further settlement reported. The concern that I have raised, and I've raised it in the staff report, is that if the existing historic openings that are to be glazed are not square, there is no detail to show how that unsquareness is going to be trimmed out in a uniform manner on the storefront. So staff still believes that there's an issue with the current condition of the lintel, even though the structural engineer says the load-bearing capacity is there. Staff still believes that there is still a deflection and displacement issue that could affect how the windows get installed. Just to detail that, to further identify why I continue to keep coming to these conclusions, you can see the amount of movement in the masonry wall over time that has been filled with widened tuck-pointed joints where the wall has moved over time. The east side of the building is Phase 2. That would again be supported, the restoration would be supported within 24 months based on sales tax generated by the business. All the items here are listed as Phase 2 work. So that's consistent with what was discussed in July. And again, the drawings call for the joint work on the east facade to be a beaded joint, as evidenced by some of the remnant joint work. The rear of the building, while it is highly visible from North First Street, we have been consistent with the applicants, both the previous one and the current applicant, that this is a rear of a building, and so, again, standard care should be taken, but it's not really subject to review by the commission. So that is the basic information about the project. As I said, the current submittal is very comprehensive and responsive to previous commission issues. I think there's a few outstanding issues to be resolved or clarified. And with that, I would invite the team to come to the lectern, and I can go back and forth with anything that you want to review.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi.
The parapet, I
If
can
you could
say.
state your name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Nicholas Mannheim with Mannheim Architecture.
Great, thank you.
The parapet detail, it is a phase one. It's just an oversight on my drawings.
And is it just, what are you doing to the parapet? You just,
Just cleaning and repairing it,
okay,
painting.
painting, okay.
I have a question about the change in,
Mike,
the question about the change in depth of the windows on the east set of windows there. And how, is that because of removal of that concrete bulkhead? Or what is the reason for that change from the last set of
Yeah,
drawings that was
basically,
presented?
that's the reason, to remove that concrete bulkhead and then replace it with the new wood bulkhead that's more reminiscent of the historical details.
And just to remember, the floor was also dropped on the east side after the original bulkhead was there, so this is a compromise physical condition as well. So the floor.
As it is in the drawing there?
Yeah, the floor on both sides was dropped about 2 feet. One was done in 1891, and the one on the east side was done in 1935 when the little owl opened up.
So the height of the wooden bulkheads that are going right underneath the windows, are they going to be the same height for the west and east set of windows?
No.
No.
So it'd be a little bit lower on the east side.
No, I mean the actual depth of.
No, it'll
the-
change just because of the grade.
So it'll be
So it'll-
thicker on the far east side than it is on.
Correct,
And it'll be uniform on the west side.
correct, yes.
Are you asking two different questions here? Are you asking?
I'm just trying to find out, because in the drawing, it looks like the depth of the wooden part of the bulkhead underneath the windows are the same on the east side and the west side in that drawing.
And that's,
But I'm
It-
understanding that they're not the same?
Yes and no. So it's like a couple inches difference.
Okay.
So, and that's just based on where the concrete on the west side comes closest to the sidewalk versus how it's built up on the east side.
So you're going to remove the concrete bulkhead on the east side, and that will be replaced with,
With the new
What?
bulkhead.
but not the
Not concrete.
decorative elements of that bulkhead?
It will be have the decorative elements.
Okay.
Yes.
so the question I think you're both trying to answer, I don't know, I think I understand it. The sill will not be the same height
Correct.
from the east to the
Right.
west. The east bulkhead, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, will not be any deeper than the west bulkhead, or it will be deeper? You will adjust the height some, or will it just be the same dimension from both the east and the west sides?
More or less, it'll be the same. Like I said, there's a slight tolerance there based on it, but we had dropped, if we remember, I think it was in July where we did have it go all the way across. So the east side had a more defined bulkhead, so that wood came up. So we were trying to keep it more consistent. so that the west and east were basically the same size going across. But that they just look visually different since the west side sits higher than the east side.
So the panel size looks like it's almost exactly the same.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, I guess that was
Yeah,
part of my question.
yeah,
The panel
the
is
panel
the same depth on
right.
both sides,
Yeah,
but underneath the panel, on the east side, there's
Slightly
additional wood that replaces that concrete bulkhead that's going to be removed.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So what is so the window sill heights for east to west are not the same also,
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
And is that because of floor height on the interior?
That was basically just to kind of create more of that historical detail. Because if you've seen in one of the older pictures, that concrete's built
Right.
up pretty high now. So we were just trying to create that more consistent detail.
Okay, thank you.
Previous iterations did have them, both sills equal across.
Okay.
What, the previous in July, I don't have that, but you were building the wood bulk, the wood recessed panel bulkhead on top of the existing concrete bulkhead.
Correct.
So what they've done is they've removed the concrete bulkhead and used that same recessed bulkhead, but lowered it down to the base of the current concrete bulkhead. So instead of, so they haven't adjusted the height of the recessed panel at all to split the difference. It's going to be the same detail from one side to the other, but it's that concrete bulkhead that was added in 1935 roughly to accommodate the remodeling of the little owl that makes replicating the 1893 storefront bulkheads possible. If that sentence made sense.
Yes.
Yeah, understood.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
what, basically the columns have gone back to where they were originally then, or under the rondels, right? That's basically,
Yeah, and Trankina provided drawings for that as well.
okay. Is there any, are you planning on doing anything to that corner that's deteriorating?
I believe the contractor's gonna clean it up, so that it looks better, but based on Trankina's observations, they don't believe anything needs to be done structurally. Are you talking about that, or are you talking
Yeah,
about the?
I'm talking about that corner there.
Oh, yeah, we'll readjust that plate. Trankina came out and did some field observations, and we got up in there with the ladder, and they were able to identify the size of the steel beam. There's actually 2 steel beams in there. And so, yes, the decorative panel will be corrected, cleaned, repainted, so that it looks a lot better.
And you're taking off the metal straps that were for that corner? Is that was for a corner sign, correct?
For an old sign, yes.
Those will be removed, though?
Yes.
Okay.
Just for everybody's clarification, the grant funding that was approved last night has approximately $25,000 included in it for the repair of this corner. So again, if they're not doing the corner, that would be removed. They have the ability to move some of that funding around depending on things, but there was $25,000 roughly in that grant amount to correct the displacement and the movement that's occurred over time on this corner. So again, there is some ability to move some of those funds around to other preservation elements of the south facade, but there was that amount set aside to correct the lintel and the pier.
Sorry, Michael, did you say 25,000?
regarding the columns on those two storefronts, on the ends of that beam lintel, is that load-bearing masonry, or are there columns in behind there, like on the east corner? Is that just masonry that it's bearing on? The structural doesn't show a column in there.
Correct. So it is believed that it is just masonry. It's enclosed.
Okay,
So maybe if we do some more demo, right now,
Okay.
no work's been done on it since the previous owner.
right. So the structural engineer's letter references detail 3 on S4, talks about 2 half-inch bolts going through both beams, but only at the columns.
Correct.
So that's about where the round rules are right now, right?
Correct. So
Or are
we'll,
they replacing what's there with a new bolt? And that's gonna solve all the lintel problems,
that is
huh?
the belief, yes.
Okay.
So when that occurs, will the deflection that's on the east side of that lintel be corrected? Will it be raised up so that it's level, or will that deflection still be there?
There'll probably still be some, but I believe that their belief is that it'll correct it and keep it from happening more.
Okay. So I think that it was noted that there's the potential for still some more settlement, but that's not associated with that lintel. It's associated with the east pier, the masonry pier.
But that column then is going to be expanded slightly to raise up the east portion of it? Because, when I'm looking at it, my head wants to go this way so it's level. And if you look at that line, it's more than a little bit. It's, what, 1 brick course, a half a brick course? It's
It's
2 to
something.
3 inches. And,
I'd be concerned about trying to move it
yeah.
beyond where it is right
Yeah,
now.
Yeah, well, it looks like the whole thing came down almost, yeah, that's an odd one, but it doesn't answer Michael's question about the squareness of that particular pane of glass, and how is that going to be, is the glass gonna be square then, and the lintel off a little bit, or? I look at the drawing and everything looks square, which is wonderful, but we know it isn't.
Right.
So could
So,
you,
so when Connier comes out, and they'll do shop drawings for it, and submit those shop drawings, and there'll probably be some tolerance to it, to accommodate for that. But obviously, we need the structure of the steel so that there's no
yeah,
cracking on the storefront.
yeah.
And their details believe that solves that.
Now, are those, that I saw reference somewhere, cast iron? Yeah, is that lintel steel or cast iron?
It is steel.
It is, so that's why that weld is there then, because it's a little difficult to
Yeah.
weld cast iron.
Yeah.
So that was replaced at one time? When was this thing built?
1892.
When was that? That was when the new facade went in?
Was structural steel available at that? That looks like a rolled shape that's in there.
It's actually 2 doubles
Yeah,
up
yeah,
against each other. Yeah. So
Wow.
it's hard to tell from the outside, and we had to get it in there.
yeah. I'll
They were
bet.
in there peeking around at it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I saw that stiffener, that weld plate, and I was trying to figure out if it was cast iron, which is referenced somewhere, I saw that, how they welded that stiffener to a cast iron beam.
Typically, the storefront lintels are made up of 2 C channels back to back in this
Yeah,
pairing.
well, these look like I-beams according to the sketches, but,
They are. Yeah, they're double.
yeah, they're
I-beams.
rolled shapes, so. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So I guess I'm still a little bit concerned about the potential for settlement on that east pier. I know that the structural engineer said it was load bearing and that, had no problem with that, but it seemed like there was still the potential for additional settlement in the future and that it should be monitored. Is there a plan for that monitoring, or how would that be accomplished? To see if there is some, additional
I think
settlement.
part of that's
that
also
occurs.
their covering of, saying, as we all know, that nothing can 100% say there'll be no settlement, so I think, but I did actually have a second structural engineer out there as well, and they conferred as the same thing.
And so they didn't have a problem with the sidewalk
No.
being
No,
underneath
neither
the
of them
pier and, I think the packet also mentioned that the pediments above the windows, the condition of those was unclear. Has anyone inspected those? Because you don't plan on doing any work on those, is that right?
Which parts?
Above the windows, all of the 8 windows there, the lintels.
Were you talking about, was that the lintels, or were they talking about the sills?
I think you're referencing the stamped metal pediments over those windows, and I think you're asking if anybody knows the condition, if they're rusted
Correct.
through, or
Yeah.
what the condition of those are. Correct?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, I don't know that we know the exact condition of them, but if they're deteriorated, they would be fixed.
That would be part of the rehabilitation. Okay.
If the, on the east side, let me think about my question. Will the frame size to the window be wider, or will anything be changed compared to the other windows to possibly accept an issue of the rough opening being 2 out of square, where, you don't have that margin to install the windows?
I don't think we need to.
Okay.
It's I think it'll work. The compensation from
Okay.
Bonnier will take care of all that. I don't really see a need to shrink it or anything.
If it was to, would there be additional cladding added to the window, exterior window frame? Like, say,
If it needed to be thicker, you mean?
or wider,
Wider? Yeah.
If the rough opening is out of square,
Yeah,
2 inches, inch and a half, or whatever it may be, that's
Yeah, I
kind of a
saw-
large
yeah.
variable for a rough opening for a window to be
Right.
installed.
Yeah.
So would the other windows, would they all be made uniform on the window frame if that was an issue?
so you're saying like on the east end, if it was, say, 7
Say-
inches?
Right,
And the west side was 4?
Correct.
Would it be 7? That wouldn't be the intention unless that was a direction of something that you guys wanted to see.
well, I don't think it would, we wanted to see it if it had to be done.
Yeah, I'd be concerned about, because if it is dropping, do you know what the difference between the rough opening is on the west side of that opening, of the east opening versus the east side of the rough opening?
I do, but I don't have that with me. It's in my notes.
Oh. Because that would kind of tell you how much out of square it is.
From one side, from the west side, I'm going to say the east side, but the west side of that opening
Yeah,
to the east side, I want to say it's like about 1.25 inches.
okay. Because I think we'd want to, I guess the commission would want to know how you're going to make up that 1.25 inches if you're going to leave the beam where it's at.
Correct.
And that's, I think, what you're getting at, Don,
Yeah.
correct?
Typically, with the Connier system, they're able to, because it's going to be a custom
Right?
opening, they're able to kind of like go from here that way, so it's so nominal.
Okay.
By the time you get to it, to the east side, you won't tell the difference. So they're basically make up like 16ths
Sure.
along the way,
Okay,
so that visually, it would not be noticeable.
okay, thank you, understood.
So, Michael, are we considering both Phase 1 and Phase 2 tonight, or just the work to be done on Phase 1?
The submitted drawings are for Phase 1 and Phase 2. There are some notes in the drawings, if you saw, that said the work is to be submitted. I'm assuming it'd be submitted either to staff or back to the HPC for specific restoration elements. That's your call if you want it to be a staff review item or come back to the commission. But they are asking for the entire package to be approved.
And both phases should be completed within 2 years? Or is that just Phase 1?
Phase 1's going to be completed right away
Okay.
for opening.
So Phase 2 would be completed within 2
Within the
years?
24 months, correct.
I'm a little concerned about that corner still, and I think that I would want to have someone review if, because you're going to take it more apart than it is right now, correct?
No, we won't really take it apart as much.
Well, you're going to take out the existing storefront that's there, correct?
Most of it is gone
Okay.
from the previous owner. So there's not much, if you got inside of it, there's not storefront.
Okay.
That's why the boards are up.
I'm just, I'm a little concerned that, you know, I would want to have someone review what you say you're going to just have a mason come out and clean that up, basically, that corner, and try to, or tuck point it correctly.
They're doing the whole facade.
They're doing the whole facade,
Correct.
but on that corner, you're going to just basically leave it the way it is? Is that the intent?
I believe the intent is, once we get out there and get going, then, you know, we'd pull that plate off, clean it, and adjust those things after the columns are in and such. If there's any concerns, I would expect the contractor to call myself or the structural engineer out.
Yeah, once that plate's off, you'll see the bearing condition.
Correct.
And that'll tell you,
Yeah.
yeah, because the rest of it,
Right.
there's some cracks,
Right.
but, yeah, I think that bearing condition.
George, turn on your mic.
I think that bearing condition on that east lintel or column or beam is probably the most biggest concern for that. I think that's how it dropped, kind of. So, yeah, with that plate off, I think you're going to see a lot under there, Paul.
I think you will too, and I'd want to make sure that whatever happens within that if there's something that's going to happen aesthetically on the outside of it, that at least staff gets to review it, because I think it's a very important part of the whole project. And I am still concerned about the storefront not being level you might be able to work a little bit of it, but it depends on, I guess they are separate window systems between the columns, correct? They're not
Correct.
one big window system.
Correct.
So,
Well, is the east elevation pretty much vertical? It's not pitching out at all, is it?
No,
So that corner, the only real issue is the differential settlement on that corner, but the east hasn't moved.
correct.
Okay. So, yeah, I still think it's around that condition up there on the top.
Or could it be related to the bottom of that east pier, where the sidewalk goes underneath there and there's deterioration?
Yeah, but
There.
since the settlement is is uniform across?
Well, if
There's
that
no
east,
staggered joints going the other way, so
In
it's
the
settled
basement, it's
uniformly.
exposed in that corner.
Right,
And so when we were down there, there was no significant cracks or anything to raise alarms to either one of the engineers that inspected it.
Commissioner Stazen, to your point, it's not a uniform deflection if you go out there and look at it.
oh, it isn't?
If you look at the easternmost column location, that's where the greatest deflection is. I suspect that when they start tuck pointing, I don't know what grout has been slushed in at the top of that lintel, but I suspect that if the columns are sized correctly, that you're going to get some movement in that lintel, with, as from other historic buildings I'm aware of. But again, not knowing what's been slushed up in that joint as
Right.
it's opened up, it's hard to know how much movement
Yeah.
can be accomplished there. But I think to your other point, has the column moved, or is it bulged some? If you actually look up the side and you look at the joints at the top of the column, see how wide they've all gotten? It's actually slightly bulged out at the top of that pier. And that's why those joints are so wide in that part of the pier.
Oh. Okay,
It's probably only 3/4 of an inch out of
Yeah.
plumb at the top, but to answer your question, there is some movement at the top that has been mortared together.
oh, okay,
And it's basically been, it's tried to put it in to stop it from moving any
Right.
additionally. And what would the idea behind the stiffener plate at that point? That doesn't, that's what concerns me also.
well, if they removed the pitched plate, then they elongated that stiffener to try to get more bearing on what was there. There's not a lot on that corner, for a bearing for that lintel carrying the mass of that whole.
Second floor, all the
Yeah,
masonry
yeah.
up there, yeah.
But I would think, yeah, the stiffener goes behind that plate. I would hope it did.
Yeah. Is that bolted on that stiffener plate, or is that,
It's welded,
I think it's bolted.
yeah. Because at first it looked like it cracked, and I thought they just put a weld bead in there to fix the crack.
yeah,
We'll never know.
well, I think you're gonna take off the pitch plate, and you'll see behind that at that point.
Boy, even in the bearing from that going down, is it just brick with mortar slushed in there? There's no column in there, so all it is brick masonry forming a column as a bearing point for that load?
That's what they believe, that's what
I
they.
believe.
Yeah.
Wow.
and it's only
Okay.
half of that pier, the bricks on half of that pier.
Well, it corbels out a little bit, but, wow. No wonder it's cracking. Well, if you need to stiffen it after the fact, when you do your field work, it'll have to be done.
Yes.
So to answer your question earlier, you can either make it a condition of any approval that you grant to have that opened up and come back with a solution, or to the commission, or you could leave it to staff, or you could just leave it to their own devices.
Well,
You've got all
I
three
think
options.
once it's open, it should be field surveyed as well as,
I-
the only opinion you have now is based on observations before that was opened, right?
Yeah, I think I'd want to actually have at least staff look at it. I don't know whether we would have enough
No,
to,
no, but it should be professionally. I think a field surveyed after it's opened up would be appropriate.
to kind of get exactly, I mean, I'm sure that it's, well, I don't know. I wouldn't hazard a guess, but I would imagine it could be just masonry, a bearing, and that's it.
That's what I think.
I think it is too.
It's
And
been up there a long time already.
Yeah, and
though.
it looks like it's got about a foot of masonry, and, we deal with
About it.
4 to 8 inches most of the time. So it's probably got more, but it's not as,
Yeah, there's probably no bar in there either.
no, I'm sure there's
Just,
not. But it's probably, that wall's pretty thick though, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a field survey is appropriate. Once it's open. Or at least as open as you can make it by removing that
Well, removing
plate.
that pitch plate and then be able to take a look at it and maybe I think we would want to have at least staff look at that point. Does the commission agree?
No, I'd rather not put the obligation on staff. I think it should be, it's an engineer.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I agree, but I mean, from the
Well,
aesthetic.
I mean, the report or whatever should go to staff, but I wouldn't put that burden on Michael.
I would, I was thinking more of the aesthetic portion of it,
Oh,
not the structural
oh,
end of it.
okay.
I think what you're requesting is that when they open it up, whatever solution is derived by the structural engineer and the mason in combination would then be reviewed by staff instead of coming back to the commission. Is that what I'm really hearing?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really,
Exactly.
yeah, that's exactly right.
And that's
I
the
mean,
most expeditious. You
Yeah,
don't want to
yeah,
wait.
we don't have to wait a
your
month
guys
or
waiting
a
out
month and a
there
half to get us,
Until we
back
get around
in.
to it.
and especially,
But we wouldn't be there anyway, so, yeah, all you'd have to, yeah.
I would want, yeah, because I think you're gonna open up more than you know there. It's difficult to know what you got until you've opened it, though. Does anyone else have any opinions about the bulkhead location and that item? And whether that's appropriate,
So that solid red line is the compromise between the historical and what they're proposing right now?
It's just a graphic note that there could potentially be a compromise. That's not meant to be any kind of a dimensional.
okay.
The question was raised about the bulkhead with a couple of questions after the report, or after the packet went out. So I just wanted to give some kind of graphic representation that there's where it was in July, where it is now, and there could be something, if the commission feels that it needs to be compromised with having a deeper recessed panel and having the sill taller on those windows. That's all that's meant graphically.
And the drawing we're looking at here is the way that is currently being proposed, right?
Correct.
Yes.
That 1900 photo, that notation kind of truncates the bottom. Well, was this bulkhead ever level in its history, as far as you know?
It appears that it was, but again, remember that the floor on the east side was lowered in 1935. There was also a porch on this building at one time, if you remember, on the east facade when it was shortly after it was built. I don't have that one in the packet, but it was in a previous packet. When it was a saloon, there was a large porch with steps coming down to State Street. So, again, the historic condition in that 1900s era image can't exactly be replicated because the floor was lowered
Right.
on the east side in
Right.
1935. So it's going to be a compromise solution
So there's really no strong precedent to argue that they should be the same height then?
Correct.
Well, I think it looks better to have the bulkhead size and the panels be the same size, scale, than to have them be level with one another, especially if there is a difference in floor height.
Well, there's a lot going on there too with that ramp, the asymmetrical bays, the location of the front door. I don't think the first thing you're gonna notice is that those two panels aren't the same height.
Right.
No, and you can visually see the decline in the, in the front of it, how it's, one side
Yeah.
is, so it all works.
And that stepped effect because of the way the sidewalk slopes,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. And then the detail of the railing, well, maybe we should go first to the wood molding, or the brick mold. Does anybody on the commission have an issue with the brick mold? That is basically trying to replicate what was there originally, correct?
Correct. And the image that he uses is actually a picture of the actual molding that came off the building. That was a
Okay.
picture taken when we met, and so.
Yeah,
it just
so
is-
I scaled it, because I measured it too, and then I scaled it, so I thought it was easier to actually put that picture on there.
Yes.
And draw over it, and then provide the dimensions to it.
Okay.
I thought it gave a more accurate representation of that detail.
Okay.
As I was kind of drawing it, after I met with Michael, it was hard to describe the image, so I thought including the image was more appropriate.
Okay.
So the 8 window sills, I think the agreement with the city for the grant indicated that those sills would be replaced and not repaired. Is that the intent?
I believe the intent is to see if you can repair them. If we can't repair them, then replace them was an option. They're fairly deteriorated.
So we have allowed for limestone sills to be replaced on other commercial buildings. We have required that a sample be provided for staff review prior to them acquiring all the sills to make sure it's a good match and a good finish match, whether it's bush hammered or what have you. So that could also be a requirement under any motion you make.
How are those typically repaired?
There is a product, there's several products out there for masonry repair that has different levels of success depending on how much water sits on them. They have it's identified in here that they're using a Yan masonry restoration material, which has been used pretty successfully with limestone surfaces exposed to water. So it depends again on how deep the repair is and how shallow the repair is, how well that performs. So that would be one option. They could do a test patch on that, or have a representative from something like U.S. Heritage or Yan itself come out and do a sample patch and say whether they think it would be a good system for this particular condition. Again, every limestone decorative element weathers slightly differently depending on how the beds are laid and how the beds were formed and how solid the piece is. If there's a lot of subsurface delamination that you can't see, but there's hollowness to it, they might not recommend a masonry conservation approach because there's hollows in the stone that could continue to deteriorate. But I think they've called out on the notes that they would look at Yan and then evaluate it at that point.
And that color of that would try to match the existing,
Yes, they can color match the
Limestone.
stone. Mhm.
Which color? What exists now or when it was put up? It changes.
Well, and what they would recommend is that that in most of these masonry restoration products is that the stone be cleaned first.
Right.
And then make a match. And of course, limestones vary in color by the time of year and the amount of moisture in the air, so.
But if they're all, I think I would agree, though, the consistency would be yeah, particularly if some were being repaired and some replaced. That makes it, if you're doing all of them, it's probably not a big issue as it would be.
Mixing and
some-
matching.
Yes.
I think it'll be either or.
Okay.
They're all in similar deterioration.
Okay.
So I think,
Yeah.
after we take a look at one, if it's not gonna work on one, then it would be full replacement.
And on the east side, are those the same types of sills on the east side as, okay. Have the same amount of deterioration over there that front facade does?
I would say so, yes.
Any other questions from the commission?
Well, you did raise the issue of that railing, and
Yes.
if there's one thing I'm not particularly fond of, it's
It is
that
the
railing.
railing.
And let me tell you why. It looks like, are the posts round on that railing?
So,
Everything else is tubular and they're round, and then on the piping, I'm seeing that's round and everything else is linear.
yeah, so if we
So
go
I-
back to when I brought this project many years ago, you guys asked me to mimic the detail that's currently there, that railing there. So I
Oh,
matched the detail, I went out there, measured
Oh,
it, so that's why
okay.
there's a little dissimilarity.
that's
but-
the problem.
Yeah, so it does match the existing railing that's currently there. So that's why
Well,
we're,
that one looks better, I don't know.
well,
I'm sorry.
we have to do the ADA things, so
Okay,
it does
yeah.
kind of change the nature of it a little bit.
Okay,
But
then, I stand corrected. I'm not gonna go there. Well, I guess the existing one, well, no,
Go back to the.
I'm looking at that detail. Is that different than you're showing on your elevation? Okay, where is that enlargement? What piece is that?
that is on one of the detail sheets. I'm not sure. which page
Okay,
it's
but
on.
no, in the
Like a
elevation, we've
reverse.
got the elevation.
Correct, it is.
flip.
It's just a
Oh,
reverse, yes.
okay.
Yep.
That's what's bothering me. On the other side, the railing ends at the post.
Correct.
This side, it extends beyond the post.
Yeah, we have the 12-inch return for ADA.
Yeah.
I was going to reverse the detail just because I thought this question might come up, but then all the dimensions were
Yeah, I
backwards,
knew
so.
something was bothering me, but I just couldn't, that's what it is, okay. And that's ADA required now, that extended return, you can't have, okay. All right,
Could I get one other clarification of the difference between the two column wraps?
It's the lower left is the one that's going to be used.
Okay.
So that's, after structural gave me their sizes, I revised that column detail.
Okay.
So, the inside will have, it'll be built out so that it can accept the storefront. But the exterior will have the exposed column.
Okay. Do we have any other comments, questions? Nope. Sorry. We have one comment from the, if you'd like to step up and state your name, please.
I'm Carolyn Zinke, a former commissioner. I have a question about the southeast corner of the building. According to the packet, it says that it suffers from significant deterioration and material loss of the limestone foundation and apparent weakening of the brick pier above. The public sidewalk concrete steps adjacent to the foundation deterioration have been extended into the building. Whether the building corner is supported on its foundation or partially by the public sidewalk is unclear. A repair was made between 2019 and 2022. However, the details and materials of the repair were not reviewed or approved by the HPC. I wanted to know, what are you doing about that corner? That's just what I wanted to ask.
I think the Hutter Trankina letters is fairly clear that the load-bearing capacity is sound, whether the integration of the materials is good practice is still up for debate, but the engineers have verified that the pier is capable of transferring the load from the lintel to the foundation in spite of the condition of the foundation. If I've paraphrased that correctly.
Okay, thank you.
If I may though, Carol, that was Paul's comment earlier, and that was our discussion about once that plate is opened, further inspection based on field conditions with another report of any concerns, going back to Michael.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, and I would even, I don't know how you're gonna repair the limestone foundation down there either. It says that you're gonna repair it, but I don't know, you'll put a new veneer on that on the lower portion of it? Or does the, letter basically say that you're not gonna do anything?
Yeah, we're gonna cut it out and replace it. The construction engineers,
I understand. You should come up and talk at the mic.
that corner will be cut out and replaced, so
Okay,
it
so
won't.
you'll put a veneer on there to get it to look
Correct,
more appropriate than what it is right now?
correct, yes.
Okay.
Well, then it'll be another good time to inspect at the lower level, the condition, so you'll have a chance to get inside on the upper and the lower.
Yep.
So that's even better.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, without the glass in, you could support that beam, take the load off and
Yeah, I would have my construction engineer
remediate
come out.
that corner, yeah.
Do we wanna, does someone wanna craft a, motion?
Before you make a motion, I would just say, just to summarize for you all, I wrote down there were 4 basic stipulations I'm hearing from the commission's
Okay.
discussion. So, first was,
Well, Michael, should I make the motion, then you can just read them right into the motion?
what I would suggest is, I'll tell you what the stipulations are. If the commission agrees, then I would
Yeah.
make the motion based on the stipulations read into the record.
Got it.
But if the commission disagrees with these, let me know. But this is what I wrote down as you were all talking. So, stipulation 1 is a review of a report by the mason and the structural engineer once the pitch plate is removed and the lintel can be inspected, and that review would be completed by staff. Number 2 would be, I'm sorry, there were 5.
You could probably put the lower masonry one in there.
Limestone
The
in that first
limestone in the
one.
same
Okay, so I had stipulation 2 is the repair of the foundation details with that,
Okay.
cut out the limestone.
Okay.
Item 3 is that the second floor window sills would be repaired, but if that's deemed impractical, they would be replaced with a sample being provided to staff for approval. Item 4 is that the parapet work is to be completed in Phase 1. And 5th stipulation was that the exposed column detail is being used, not the concealed column detail.
I think I'd also put in for the sills that they be uniform, either replaced.
or, yeah.
Replaced or repaired, but not a mix and match.
I agree.
So are you ready to make a motion?
Yeah, I'm ready.
You're thinking.
Okay.
Go get him, Tiger.
So I move that the plans submitted for 101 West State Street be approved as submitted, subject to the following conditions that Michael articulated.
Do we want to state those conditions? We probably should state.
For the record again, okay.
Stipulation 1 would be a review of a report prepared by the Mason Structural Engineer to be completed by staff. Item 2 would be the repair of the limestone foundation by cutting out and replacing stone. Item,
Michael, that one there, though, should have the same caveats as number 1.
and reviewed by staff.
Well, you want to
And-
review the condition underneath once that's removed. So that's why maybe combining the two, however you want to do it, but it should be reviewed, the field conditions reviewed there as well, once that remediation starts.
So those are 2 stipulations. The third one
Would
was,
be that the second floor window sills would be either repaired with a masonry restoration product or replaced with a sample approved by staff, but in any case, the sill replacement shall be uniform in treatment across the facade. Item 4 is that the parapet work is to be part of Phase 1. And item 5, stipulation 5, is that the exposed column detail will be used rather than the concealed column detail. And I think that was all of them.
That's it.
Yep.
Yes.
My notes are getting even,
I so move.
can I get a second?
I second.
Okay, if you could call the roll.
Hartman. Jensen.
Aye.
McManus.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Solomon.
Aye.
Stazen.
Aye.
Milmer.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I just say one thing before they leave? Thank you so much for investing in that beautiful old building and taking the time to put some great thoughts into what you're doing and the details of your project. So thank you very much for investing in that.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 5 is the Secretary's report, staff updates.
okay, so first item on the agenda is regarding building permit update. I promised that I will fill you on what I've been doing besides the cases that you see between meetings. So since our meeting of October 17th, I've approved 8 roof tear-offs and replacements on behalf of the commission. I've approved 2 window replacements for windows not facing a street or at the rear of a building, 6 signs for commercial properties, 2 projects at non-contributing properties, 2 fences, and 2 site paving permits where there were no changes in the dimensions of the driveways. So the total administrative permit review since October is 22 cases that I've reviewed on your behalf. Are there any questions?
Yes. I see that, and I should have noticed that before, that tonight's case was 23-129.
Correct.
Have we reviewed 129, or is that the ones that came through your, how do you assign numbers to those?
So at the beginning of the fiscal year, I started at 1, 001. So there've been 129 cases. I believe, I don't have the number right in front of me, but I believe you've either looked at 34 or 36 cases here at the commission this year. And the other 90, some I reviewed.
Wow.
A good portion of those this year were roof replacements because of the hailstorm that went through. We have, not only in the historic district, but across Geneva, we have just been swamped with storm damage permit requests. So I have probably reviewed more roofs on behalf of you this year than I've done in
Wow.
the preceding 11 years combined.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I saw that number, and I'm thinking, I didn't remember, but, so they had to come through. That's impressive.
Yeah, we're about at the same proportion. We are way ahead in permit reviews this year, but we're about the same proportion of what you've reviewed in comparison to what's been reviewed administratively.
Great.
It is public record of who pulls a permit in for roofing, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So that is the building permit review update. The other item under the Secretary's report is you all got a copy of the proposed draft window assessment packet. If you didn't bring one and you want one, I did make some copies tonight. But the draft window assessment packet came about because of repeated concerns by the commissioners of trying to compare apples to apples and getting full submittals for these window replacement projects. Jesse Muncy, who is our assistant planner, and I worked to take your thoughts and put them into a format. And we are open to comments or suggestions. I know that some of you have talked to me about the form itself. It is a little bit, perhaps appearing at first to be a little bit unwieldy, but it really does make the process uniform, and it is a fillable form, and it can literally, the assessment can be turned over to the window rehabber, the cost estimate can be turned over to the window replacement contractor, and so it may not be as much of a burden to the property owner as much as a help and a protection to them to make sure they're really getting a full, complete bid for proposed work. But with that, I'll open it up to any comments, and if there are things that we need to amend or address, we will do that. Otherwise, we will start implementing this with the next requests and see how it works with a few applicants. So questions, comments?
I think it's excellent, and I think it's going to really help with the process of the windows, because before there were so many unknowns when they would come before us, and we would ask questions, and often they didn't know or they didn't have the documentation. So I think this lays everything out for them, and when they do come before us, we are going to have the information we need to make an educated decision on what needs to be done. So thank you.
Well, I agree, and I sent an email to Michael. Well, the first thing I did was I counted the windows. I don't know why, but I'm thinking if I have to look at photographs from inside and out in typical conditions for 32 window, I think it was 20, I don't want to exaggerate, I think it was 28. I think that packet would become enormous. And Michael, and then I said, but, our purview is only, street visible. And so then Michael clarified that. But, in your illustration, it shows all of them. So maybe some nomenclature for somebody that's filling. Are we going to tell them you don't have to do them all?
Sure,
You
what-
just have to do certain ones? or-
What typically happens when somebody's looking at a window repair or replacement, they do contact me, and I would go through them on their particular property, which ones are visible from the street. One of the, the issues that we have is on some of these narrow lots, and we've talked about this on the last two window projects, is how much of the side you can really see. If they're fairly tight lots, you're really not seeing the window at all. You're seeing maybe the window opening. So some of those might be a judgment where I may say you might want to do those windows as a precautionary thing. So if the questions come up, they can answer them, or the commission may say, no, we really can't see those windows clearly from the street, so we're not going to review those. But I typically will walk through, and I would walk through this form with the applicant as well to, help clarify any questions they might have.
Well, and as a follow-up, if I was selling windows, I know the first thing I would tell you is probably they couldn't be fixed. They needed to be replaced. And so do all these in this evaluation require both a repair opinion and a replacement opinion? How do we?
Sure. If you're repairing your windows, but doing a major repair that would require a review by the commission, you don't do the replacement portion. But if you're requesting to replace windows, then you would do both the repair
Okay.
and the replacement
I heard
assessment
a
and
lot
cost estimate.
from homeowners saying it was more expensive to fix them than it was to put in new ones. That seems to be a common, I don't know that to be true.
And
And that's what, I don't want to doubt anybody's opinion on that, but if this is an issue, how are we assured as commissioners that that statement is really factual?
I think one of the things is we do have the window contractors list that we have available on our website for people who do window repair and rehabilitation. I would not think this commission would ever accept a window repair estimate from a window replacement company.
Right.
So I would think they would be going to different contractors for those numbers. One of the things that we've had a really hard time getting people to provide us is typically a window replacement contractor will provide us the unit cost of the window, but excludes all the labor for removal and replacement or installation of the new window. So this form addresses that to get that number in there. The other thing is that we've had, some people want to do full jam replacements, don't count the time to remove the interior trim, and then if the plaster around it gets damaged, the repair of the plaster, the repainting of the wall. Those are all costs that should be factored into the replacement of windows, and that's what this attempts
Well,
to do.
I'm thinking of two in recent months that I recall specifically a statement from the owner that repair was too expensive. And that was as far as it went.
And that, again, in both the cases you're talking about, staff made lots of attempts to extract this information out of them, but we did not
Right.
have a form that said, you need to fill this form
Oh,
out. So
well,
I think that will
okay.
help that a little bit. We also have a little backup tool. There's a window replacement calculator that Hutchinson, Kansas prepared, and you can actually plug some numbers into it and get an idea if the cost estimates are really accurate.
Okay.
It's a pretty nifty tool. I don't remember what it's called, but if you look up Hutchinson, Kansas window calculator or window replacement calculator, window repair calculator, it will pop up, and it's a pretty handy little checking tool to see how accurate some of these repair costs.
This is through the municipality?
Yes, their Historic Preservation Commission got a grant and developed this.
Oh.
Now, the thing you have to do is, as you know as an architect, is that there's a regional factor. So
Right.
you've got to add that factor in for the
Right.
Chicagoland area versus what Kansas is. And that's not always easy for everybody to find what that factor is unless you have cost estimating books at your
Right.
fingertips.
Right, right.
The Corps of Engineers have those numbers though, too. So and that's
Well, the-
relatively-
You can find it, yeah.
it can be found.
Insurance industry is famous. That's what those Sanborn maps really started from, was replacement of losses, not to document, I think, what was specifically there.
Right.
And And I guess the last one I had was, I'm paraphrasing here, is like if it's original material, we all value the guy, along with your 5-minute guide tonight, but it seems like if it's not, it just opens the door to just about anything, and I don't know how we could get better documentation on how old these windows really are. I know you had, your methodology works for that, but the window repair people generally do any evaluation of age or?
They can. A lot of it has to do with the joinery of the windows.
Okay.
And you can date them. I mean, the earliest windows are pegged together, the sash, and even when they've been painted with coats and coats of paint, if you strip some of that paint back and you can find the pegging, those are usually before 1850. The way the mortise and tenons work, or the way they're screwed together, or, glued together, there are ways to kind of date windows. Also, mutton patterns also help date windows, although they do get repeated. So 6/6 have had a couple periods in existence, and they've made resurgences, but you can date the windows based on mutton patterns and joinery patterns. It's always hard, of course, when you go into a house that's been painted and painted and
Right.
painted to
Right.
make a clear judgment of the windows. When the windows are painted shut and you can't even open them to look at them to see the joinery.
Well, this is close to perfect right now, but I guess we have the opportunity to tweak it as long, if some of this stuff comes up. But I think for me, trying to compare apples to apples and cases to cases, this is what I really needed.
Michael, per George's comment right there, I mean, I'm assuming that down the road, this can be amended or changed a little bit to conform to, if there are any issues, to fine-tune this application?
I'm constantly fine-tuning forms. I mean,
Not trying to give you more work.
No. No, that's what we do. I mean, if you recall, those of you who've been on the commission for a while, I used to summarize the findings of fact and significant items in a chart, and was finding that wasn't getting used by many of the commissioners. So now it's added in a text format at the end of the report. So I'm always trying to find ways to better serve both the commission and the public.
So it can be altered or fine-tuned down the road?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is just a tool to make sure that we're getting apples to apples, and I think it'll be good because I think with just I think when you walk through with homeowners, you'll find out where things end up being, and most people don't end up having to replace all their windows, they may, or they may not all be historic, so.
And typically, we've only, I think, I'd have to look back, but I think this year we've had 3 requests for complete window replacements. Usually it's a room or a facade of them, 5 to 6 windows is fairly typical of the requests we've had until this year.
Yeah,
I think this is excellent protection for, an applicant also,
Could this be used for doors as well? I know we had a door thing as well, not too long ago.
It could be adapted for doors. It could be adapted for our siding policy as well, to create a form
Yeah,
similar to this.
but I
so
mean,
that it
doors
gives
are pretty close to,
you windows.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think siding might be appropriate because there's a lot of people that
Well.
want to replace their siding,
Well,
especially.
the survey of the gross area, we had a few of those. Oh, it's all bad,
Yeah, exactly.
I have a question just in general. If someone lives in the district and they know they just want to repair their windows, their historic windows, do they need a permit for that? And is that under our purview?
It depends on how they're going about the project. So if they are taking out a sash at a time, and replacing it, that's pretty much falls under ordinary repair and maintenance. If they want to take a whole elevation of windows out and completely rebuild them, then we would probably require a permit. I think the permit would be required for that. But just doing a sash at a time and making minor repairs of a bottom rail or check rail or something, no, that would be maintenance.
Okay, I was thinking of ways to potentially cut down the number of windows that, an applicant might need to consider.
Yeah, I can check with the building department a little bit more, but I believe if you're doing just a single window and it's just a repair of an element of the sash, they don't require a permit. But
Yeah, I kind of looked at the code and it just basically, as far as I could see, just mentions replacement. So, maybe that could be checked on and,
Typically what happens if somebody's going to do a repair project, they do talk to me about it because one, a lot of them don't know where to go to, and I say, well, we have this wonderful little tool on our website, and so we do have a conversation and an introduction, and that's where I kind of assess oftentimes what level of work they're doing.
Okay.
It doesn't always work that way, but that's generally how it's worked.
just trying to keep George from having to look at so many photos and.
And again, what I did before I developed this is I reached out to preservation colleagues across the country. And this is not much different than what other commissions are doing. This is a little bit tuned to our window policy. But most of the commissions that I heard back from did require the interior and exterior photographs, the detailed photographs. So while it may be a little bit of a learning curve here, it's not out of the norm of what's being done for other preservation commissions.
I did a renovation job of a Navy building down at Pensacola, and we had an individual picture for every window. We had an individual interior and exterior for each window that we were replacing. And it got through the SHPO of Florida, and the Historic Preservation Planner of Pensacola, NAS Pensacola, which I guess is something to be proud of.
Well, again, I would just, if there are no other questions, I would just like again to publicly thank Jessie Muncy for her work on this because she pulled it together. So I appreciate that help. And so, like I said, if there are any other changes, we'll make those tweaks. But we are going to work on some other forms to, again, help unify some of these processes.
That's great.
That would be good.
Thanks, Jesse.
Okay, if that's your report, correct? New business from the commission? Questions, comments? Okay,
I have a question, and in regards to that house that you looked at on South Street, where there apparently have been some, you want to bring that up? Or not?
Go ahead, you're
Okay.
doing great. I'll chime in if I need to.
Well, it seems that what was the address there? Do you remember?
501 South Street.
And it appears that there's been some modifications to the front porch and some addition of, detailing that was taken from the side screened-in area and put in the front. And I don't think that ever came before the commission, and it seems like it may have needed to be.
I've not been by the house this week, but I wasn't aware of any alterations or embellishments of the existing front porch other than the rebuilding of the stairs. There is a requirement, and the owner has been notified that railings will be required. And if he puts a railing on the house to meet code, then that does not need to come before the commission. But if he chooses to put a balustrade with a newel post, that would come before the commission because that is an alteration of the front porch. But as far as, like I said, the last time I went by the house, there had been no embellishments of the historic front porch other than the rebuilding of the stairs. Those were done as a repair and maintenance. It did not come to my attention until after the permit had been issued because the stairs had rotted on that had been there. Had it come before the commission, I would have requested that the commission look at maybe relocating the stairs to where they historically would have been. But again, it was looked at as an immediate safety issue by the building division. As far as the side porch, there was a slight overzealousness of how far the repairs went. We have had that discussion at the building division, and we have talked with the owner about that. It was to the point that the work had been pretty well completed by the time it came to our attention. And the information that we have received is that the historic porch columns that had been removed are being removed and stripped and repaired and being put back in place. The owner has been notified that any future exterior work that is beyond ordinary repair and maintenance as defined in our siding and window policies does need to come before this commission.
Thanks.
Anything else? Yes?
There's still a hole in the blacksmith shop.
No, let's go back to 501 South Street.
Okay.
The side porch, because those columns were original to the house, to the front porch.
Front porch.
So those are being repaired.
That's what has been reported to us. I have not received any proof otherwise, but again, that is what's being represented to us, that those are being repaired.
Thank you.
And you asked about 40 State Street.
Yes.
That has been, the owners have been notified by code enforcement. We have been working on that, and within the last 10 days, we've probably received four, maybe five inquiries about what was happening with it, and those inquiries have been notified that code enforcement has notified the owner that the wood superstructure needs to be secured and made weather tight, as well as the window openings.
Is there a time frame under which they need to accomplish that, or?
I did not bring a copy of the letter. Typically, they're given about 30 days to at least respond with a plan, but that is totally under code enforcement at this point.
Okay. I mean, that repair wouldn't come before the commission, would it? That would
It's
be
a
some-
temporary situation.
Correct. It depends on what the proposal is. So for instance, if a proposal is to put another temporary tarp on the building, and that does meet the minimum for weather tightness, depending on how it's installed, that would not come before the commission. If there was a proposal, say, to put metal roofing and siding on the, on the wood superstructure, that would come before the commission, because that would be a change of material, a change of material, and it would be what's considered a semi-permanent roofing material. So again, it depends on what is offered as a remedy.
Thanks.
Okay. Any comments from the public?
You have to read the statement.
Yes. If there are none,
Move to
Okay.
adjourn?
Please. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.